caught up at this point because they had to.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Trial by fire. Now it's like, well, yeah, it works fine. So might as well just keep doing it.
Exactly.
We are now live on YouTube, just so everybody knows.
Okay. I will be right back.
But I mean, it should be us. Belts and suspenders.
You guys are.
Oh, I paused it. I can turn it off.
Free lunch. Yeah, it's, with the Rotary Club. Yeah.
Mr. Combs, are you joining us from the road?
I may or may not be on the road right now.
It's like that time of evening.
I will definitely be listening more.
Right on.
Give me an elbow when we're on. Yeah, we're gonna be in just 1 minute. That's right. This one. It's all on the wrist. Yep. Call the meeting of the Planning Commission to order this April.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
That's all right. This April 20th, 2022. If staff could call roll, please.
Ryan Pearson,
Here.
Paul Wagaman is excused. Philip Combs,
Present.
Lynn Larson,
Here.
Brian Parsons,
Here.
Robert Estrada.
Here.
You have quorum, Chair.
You forgot Don Daniels.
Oh, I'm sorry. Don Daniels,
Here.
you now have quorum.
Yeah, thank you. It's all good. Before us, we have the minutes of April 6, 2022. Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Larson made a motion to have a second.
Second.
It's Mr.
Pearson.
Pearson. Sorry, the screen, I don't have you up on the screen. So
Yeah.
Mr. Pearson, second. Any discussion or changes? Mr. Estrada.
Would you please add me to commission members present?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Estrada made a note to add his name to be present at the last meeting. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? With those corrections, the minutes passed as written. Thank you. Any changes to our agenda tonight?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. At this time, I open it up for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak before the commissioners are able to do at this time? We have anyone signed up to talk tonight on public comment? No chair, no nothing. All right, we have no one in the audience tonight, so we'll close the public comment. We do not have a public hearing. We move right to number 7, unfinished business. But first, before that, welcome. Thank you, Mr. Boki, Council Member Boki. All right, so unfinished business, discussion of the 2022 Shoreline Restoration Plan updates and action on recommendation to the City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll walk through this pretty quickly. This is a very brief and somewhat technical couple of amendments to the Shoreline Restoration Plan. So as the commission is aware, once a year based on the action taken by council several years ago to adopt the Shoreline Master Program and the Shoreline Restoration Plan. Once a year, we have a discussion at the Planning Commission regarding restoration activities that have happened over the last 12 months. And then there's a conversation and discussion among planning commissioners whether there should be any changes to the restoration plan. The restoration plan is different from the Shoreline Master Program, which has its own update schedule based on state law. So this year, there were 2 suggested amendments provided by the city to the commission for consideration, and a public hearing was held on April 6th. What you see right here on the screen are those 2 amendments, one of which is to remove item 18 under section 4.2 of the plan, because this is a monitoring program that the city no longer participates in. The second amendment is in section 7.2, just to correct that kind of in between brackets sentence that says current study rejects. So removing those 2 things, and everything else within the restoration plan would remain unchanged. There were public comments submitted both electronically and then live the evening of the public hearing that was held on April 6th. And in the the commission's packet, there were responses from the city regarding each one of those comments. Very high level summary, most of them related to opposition to ongoing planned and already occurred alum treatments on Wahop Lake. And there was a discussion via those comments with the city whether or not those treatments have been effective and or whether they should continue. The city continues to maintain that those are appropriate, and there's been discussion within emails outside of public comment regarding that. And including in that is this email response that was sent from the city manager to Al Schmauder on April 12th. That was also submitted for the commission's review in tonight's meeting packet. So you'll see comments from Eric and Jen Chandler, Al Schmauder, and also Don Russell, and then Janet and Kurt Spingath. All of these have been responded to. And really, the only one that is related specifically to any changes to the Shoreline Restoration Plan were those from Mr. Schmauder. And that is something that was addressed again in that email response from the city manager that is now being incorporated into the city's response to the public hearing comments. So very quickly, what that email explained was that there are a number of federal and state laws and agencies that are responsible for water quality, and in particular, the Clover Creek Basin's water quality. And these are all things outside of the purview of the city of Lakewood. So there is certainly collaboration and coordination between the city and then the state, county, and federal agencies that are involved with water quality regulation. But most of this is outside of the city's control. But this message clarifies that for the public, for those who submitted those comments, as well as anyone else. Where we sit tonight is with these 2 amendments that I mentioned before. The suggestion is, or a proposed motion is before you tonight to go ahead and adopt a resolution that would recommend those 2 amendments to the restoration plan up to the city council for consideration. And if that were to happen tonight, the city council will pick this up on May 9th and move through its legislative schedule. Assuming that moves as planned, they would be taking action to adopt those changes on June 6th. So the proposed motion you see on the screen in front of you, which would be to adopt the Planning Commission Resolution 2022-02, which recommends those amendments to the plan up to the city council.
Good. At this time, then, do we have any questions regarding to this, or do we have I have a resolution number 2022-02. Do you want to ask any questions first before we take a vote? Or Mr. Estrada?
Were we able to ascertain whether the respondent was a member of the Clover Creek watershed or the Clover Creek Council?
Which commenter are you referring
I'm
to?
sorry, it was the response that Mr. Caulfield gave to Mr. Schmauder.
Schmauder. Mr. Schmauder is a member of the Clover Creek Watershed Council. But whether or not he was communicating to the city council and city manager in that capacity, we have not heard back from him. So it was the city manager asked that question in the email, but we did not get a response.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from Parsons, Pearsons, Combs? Seeing none, Mr. Larson, any questions? Go ahead, Mr. Larson.
I'm willing to propose the motion at the appropriate
Okay,
time.
great. We have a motion. Do we have a second to pass this, approve? We have a second on the resolution 2022-02.
Second.
Mr. Estrada, second. Any other further discussion or changes to this resolution? Hearing or seeing none at this time. All those in favor by saying aye.
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 Right.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, the resolution 2022-02 passes with recommendation to the city council with those amendments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Next on our list of unfinished business, discussion regarding economic development strategic plan presentation or presented on 4/6/22.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will share my screen once more briefly to just bring your attention again to the presentation that was made by Economic Development Manager Becky Newton at the last meeting. Sorry, I have to scroll through this. Apologies. And if you recall, she walked through what was then a draft version of the economic development strategy that was being updated, and then requested that the Planning Commission review it in full and decide if they wanted to provide any additional feedback to her. So this is just an opportunity for the Planning Commission to do that tonight. You'd like to discuss it among yourselves. I did receive comments back from Ryan Pearson saying that he felt it was good and he didn't have anything additional to add, but if the other Planning Commission's members wanted to discuss it.
Great. I appreciate that. So any comments to this topic? No, Mr. Estrada, nothing. Combs, Pearson, Combs, Parson. Mr. Estrada?
Does this also encompass the transportation issues, or is that a separate?
That will be next.
Okay, thank you.
Yep,
Okay,
great.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, hearing no other further comments, we appreciate everyone's efforts that sent in, and Ms. Newton came to the Rotary Club last Friday, so she went over some of the same thing, and there was many questions and some recommendations and stuff from the members and guests.
Great.
So she took away, she felt very pleased that she was able to come and talk to the Rotary Club, and they give some great suggestions and ideas. So that was very helpful.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, what I'll do is just pass along the Planning Commission's, I think, consensus that
Sure.
it's ready to move forward.
Yep,
Yep,
absolutely. You're
All right, thank you.
great. Under new business, we have a review of the 6-year transportation improvement plan, 2023 to 2028.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And tonight, to make that presentation, we have Charles Ted Hill, and hopefully he'll be able to share his screen and move through it as he wishes. So go ahead.
Great, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Let me see if I can share this. Share. Are you seeing the PowerPoint presentation?
Yep.
Yes, and if you could, sir, please speak up a little bit more.
Will do. So good evening again, Ted Hill, Capital Projects Division Manager. I'm sure as you have seen before, this is a requirement of an RCW that we update this 6-year comprehensive plan every year. And that's what I'm presenting to you tonight. Basically, the projects we're adding will make us eligible for state and federal funding. And these are just added to the existing list that we have. So this PowerPoint presentation will show you what we're going to be removing as projects we're completing and the few projects we are adding this year to have on our 6-year plan. So without ado, let's see if I can get to the next screen. Sit down, all right? I'll just click it. Are you seeing that?
Yes.
All right, so projects to be completed either last year or this summer. So we have the Stillicum Boulevard sidewalks. This was the safe routes to school portion of the project between Phillips and Weller on the north side. The sidewalks are in. They're actually going to stripe this weekend, and hopefully the luminaire poles will show up soon, and that will complete the project. Stillicum sidewalks non-safe routes to school is actually the opposite side of the road on the south side, and it actually continues all the way from Weller on the west to Custer on the east side. So that is actually going to be opening up bids next week and start construction soon thereafter. 59th Ave sidewalks, and that is between Bridgeport Way and 100th. We are missing sidewalks on the east side of 59th there, and this will install those sidewalks, missing sidewalks. Having a pre-construction meeting tomorrow with the contractor, actually, and we'll be starting probably within a couple weeks. 2021 street lighting. We have a street lighting program that'll push street lights, new street lights out every year, I think until 2025, if I recall. This year's we've awarded to the contractor, and with all of the supply chain issues, we are waiting on materials to show up to actually be able to install the lights. But we do have a contractor on board, and we're just waiting for materials to show up. So that will be constructed this summer. South Tacoma Way overlay, that's actually a federal aid project. That'll overlay South Tacoma Way from SR 512 south down to 108th Street, where last summer we completed 108th from was that Bridgeport all the way to South Tacoma Way. So this will be a continuation of that project, and hopefully we'll be out to bid here soon. Phillips Road Sidewalk, which is a community development block grant project, will be Phillips Road between Agate and Onyx, and that will be on the west side of the road. And that one actually opens up bids tomorrow, so it'll be starting soon as well. And then the big beast of a project that's so phase 1 of Gravelly Lake Drive. They are currently in the middle of finishing the roundabout at Washington and Gravelly and Interlochen and Gravelly. Once those are complete, they'll put the final lift of asphalt down, and phase 1 will be considered done and wrapped up. And we already have a contractor, who happens to be the same contractor, doing phase 1. We'll do phase 2, and that will start on the east side down at Eastgate Road and work its way back along Washington all the way to Interlochen.
Excuse me, Mr. Hill, we have a question here by Mr. Estrada on this specific issue here, or topic.
Mr. Hill, good evening, and thank you for being here with us. A couple of questions regarding the 2021 street lighting. If I recall correctly, from we also accept the existing lighting from Lakeview Light and Power, about 313 fixtures, if I recall. Is that all of the lighting from Lakeview Light and Power, or is there more to be received in the future?
This is the first I'm hearing of that, so I would assume, I haven't heard anything. That must be all that we are receiving from them.
Okay, well, all right. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to catch you off guard there.
Nope. I just hit my 1-year mark, so I'm sure something happened before me that I'm unaware of, but I have heard nothing else about accepting any more lights from another.
That was before your time, so okay, sorry about that. Next question regarding the Gravelly Lake Drive. So questions from residents. So why haven't they completed the roundabout at the corner of Gravelly and Nyanza, and they started on the other one at the corner of Gravelly and Washington? They haven't finished one and they already started in the other.
So the problem is we have a bunch of power poles on the east side of the road there that we need them to move all of their stuff out of the way so we can finish. So we did the roundabout, which we could do, but we're waiting to finish until all those poles and all the utilities on the poles are moved out of the way. So we moved up the road where we didn't have issues. But again, if you look at Veterans in Gravelly, there's a pole right in the middle of the roundabout, which again, waiting on those utilities to get out of the way. I actually was physically out there myself today providing traffic control to get one of these utilities to move off the pole. So
You
we
get on
are,
those utility companies, get on them, get on them.
we are doing our best.
Mr. Hill, so what is the schedule for completion of that roundabout at Gravelly and Nyanza?
So we're still looking at finishing up the project by the end of May completely, and that's all roundabouts done and final lift of asphalt put on the project. It might have to trickle a little into June just because if we can't get the utilities out of the way, we might miss our pavers that are already scheduled. And if we miss them, we have to get back on their schedule.
Understood.
It's going to be close to end of May, June for completion.
Great, thank you. All right, no other questions at this time. So go ahead,
All right.
Mr. Hill.
So that'll be our projects to complete or are complete or going to be complete this summer. And the one that is wrapping up, I thought I'd throw some photos in here because photos are worth 1,000 words. So this is the Stillicum Sidewalk Safe Routes to School portion. As you can see, what it looked like before with no sidewalks and just kind of a muddy shoulder. Now there's nice curb gutter sidewalks in, little retaining wall to help with the grades. And like I said, striping will go down Saturday and lights will show up as soon as shipments can be received. And that will be the last thing to finish up that project. So want to have some photos. Next, projects to be added to the tip this year. We only have 3 of them. Boston Avenue between I-5 and McCord Drive. And I'll get to some visuals here to help you out with where these are at. John Dower Road from 78th to 75th. To complete sidewalks on the east side of the road there, and 112th Street from South Tacoma Way to Steel Street. And again, we're adding at least the last one here to make sure that we're going to be eligible for a grant that we're going to be applying for that's actually due May 2nd. So again, trying to make sure we get projects on our tip that are ones that can help us get state or federal funding. So hopefully you guys can see this map halfway decent. The blue lines are the projects that we're completing and where they're at. And then the orange ones are the 3 new added projects. So to the right-hand side, you kind of see Springbrook as a blow up to show Boston Avenue. To the left of the blow up, you can see 112th is a project listed as number 176. And way up to the north end, you'll see John Dower there with the 175 for the sidewalks on the east side that we're proposing. Give you a little bit more visuals. Oh my goodness, I got an empty slide. Oh, I'm adding slides. Never mind. Don't hit enter. There we go. Boston Avenue. So right now it's a minor road widening, curb and gutter, storm, sidewalk, illumination, making sure we're ADA compliant with what we're putting in. And the current estimate for the project is $308,000 in today's dollars, which I hate to say our estimates now have to inflate quite a bit as we're projecting out for other years. And then in the left-hand corner is a little, another little exhibit showing where it's at in the world there in the Springbrook area. John Dower Road from 78th to 75th. Again, my road widening to the east side, curb gutter, sidewalk, storm, illumination, and making sure everything meets ADA. And we're right around $240,000. This project's one that we're going to be going after a Safe Routes to School grant application, which is due June of this year. We have a lot of grant applications this year that we're applying for. And then 112th Street from South Tacoma Way to Steel Street. I have the, it's basically a mill and fill is our engineering terminology, a grind and overlay. And my estimate's roughly about $1 million. We're polishing that up right now. So I have it read. We're going to have that grant going in again May 2nd for the PSRC federal grant round. So I will pin that one down here soon before I present this to council. We'll have a better number. And then the same map again, if you guys have any questions. I did not provide the big tip, which has all the projects that have been on for years, but obviously we're doing a good job at chugging away at them, as you could see with the project we're completing this year. And we have, I think, about 11 to 12 projects that are going to go to construction next year already in the books. So It's a busy time for us here in Public Works Engineering.
Great. Mr. Hill, Don Daniels here. I have a question in regard to the project on Stillicum Boulevard from going from Weller back to Phillips on the lake side. There's, so they did the, this curb and sidewalks on the opposite side there, but on the lake side, there's several power poles that were just cut off because they installed those big, huge, but geez, why are they still left there, the ones that are cut off? And it just seems like if someone was being distracted driver, they're so close to the side of that road. I mean, it seems like a very serious hazard there, but I noticed a lot of that side, the lake side, there's a lot of, trash or looks like construction when they drilled the holes and put those huge power poles up. There's product, laying on the side there. Any idea of when are they going to be removing those last ones that were cut off?
So that's, I feel like a broken record when it comes to the franchise utilities. So the same issue we're having down at Gravelly is the same issue there. They've taken the stuff off the top of the poles and they cut it down to the stuff that's still remaining on the poles. It's kind of their way they do it in the field. If there's debris left over, I will deal with the debris. And yes, what they had to construct out there were ginormous, they call them P-lam poles because they needed the extra strength due to all the curvature of the road through that area. Tacoma Power, because they're a franchise within our right of way, they spent like $1.5 million on replacing those poles to be ready for our project. And we're at the mercy of some of these franchise utilities to get off of those old poles so they can get pulled out of the way, literally. Okay. And I think right now we're still waiting on Lumens is I think our guilty party right now to get off of those poles.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have other questions. Mr. Estrada.
Mr. Hill, I'm the newest member of the Planning Commission. And so if these questions that I asked have already been asked of you before, I apologize. But another question regarding the roadway improvements. So again, I've been asked why Nyanza Road was not improved upon, since that's a major arterial into main downtown, whereas Gravelly Lake just goes to houses and Nyanza goes to town. So why wasn't that worked on or put in part of the improvement program?
So good question. I can't speak to the history because again, my 1 year was last week. So I've come into Gravelly Lake construction being already slated and moving, and Veterans Drive was done right before that. So I would assume part of this is improving the connection to that general area, since Veterans Hospital is a very heavily used facility by my family as well. So Nyanza, to answer the other part of your question, it does go into town, and it actually is slated to be designed for a improvement. I think we're starting. It got funded through the Transportation Bond District. So this is something that our finance director, and I think she just changed titles, worked out with Paul, our public works director. There's 7 projects that are going to happen over the next 6 years. And Nyanza will be the next round. So I think we're starting design in 23 and construction in 24, if I remember right, but I'd have to pull that paperwork. We had 7 new projects funded by council, and it's all our money. This year, it's design of Hipkins from Stillicum down to 104th, and the Ardmore Whitman 93rd juncture. We call it the flux capacitor because it kind of looks like the flux capacitor from Back to the Future. Those are the 2 designed this year, construction next year, and then we have 2 designed next year with construction the following year. And again, 7 projects total. It's a lot of good work we're doing for projects that can't score well on some of these grants that we go after. So I'm glad we were able to find our own money to fill the gap.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Hill, very much. Appreciate all you're doing with your department to make Lakewood a safer and better place. And I echo Mr. Estrada's comments about Nyanza Road. It's dangerous to walk along Nyanza Road before you got here, and it's a few years ago now, but one of my best friends' wife got hit by a car while she was out jogging on Nyanza Road and quite seriously injured. And that is an improvement that can't come soon enough. My question is with regard to 112th and Steel. I watched that intersection a lot, and I wonder if you have improvements to the intersection or the width of the road, especially as it approaches the intersection from actually all four directions. Less from the east, but especially from the west and from Highway 512. Could you comment on that and see if how what you're doing is going to enhance the flow through that intersection?
Well, the project slated is just a grind and overlay, so we unfortunately won't be improving the flow, and the signal itself is actually in Pierce County. So our city right of way stops short of the intersection, because that's my way home. I make a right there to head around and do the loop, and
Right.
I can't believe that signal pole is that close to the road. And we've been kind of talking about 112th with regards to, well, should we add sidewalks in? There's a bus stop that doesn't even have a sidewalk, just the extra wide shoulder there under the flight strip. So I've heard of some discussions, but unfortunately, the current project we have slated is just to get the road back to something new. And we do have it on this year's palette for our chip seal and patch project. So we will go through and try to patch up some of the really bad portions, but the road itself really needs a redo. And since I didn't mention it before, Nyanza is also on our chip and patch for this year to try to take care of some of the bad stuff and get us through till we start designing and construct Nyanza as a rebuild project. So we do have quite a few of these projects slated for our chip and patch. City manager has given us an extra $270,000 this year due to the harsh winter, and we're going to spend every penny we can to go as far as we can to improve stuff through chip and patch this summer.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hill. Any other questions? Pearson, Parsons, Combs? Nothing? Okay, great.
I do have a question.
Okay, Mr. Combs.
Hey, I was wondering, Mr. Hill, if you could just highlight what the next big round of pavement areas are that we need to be addressing. I'm sure you've been looking at the pavement index, and you probably have some report on what our roads need the most. What are the most critical areas for the next 2 or 3 years that we should be, and given all the concern you've heard from just that single roundabout, and I think everyone here has probably heard some complaints about it at some point. Is there anything that we might be able to take away from it that we can apply on those next big projects?
I want to start with the last part of this first. So I guess with the roundabout, is it just that they started one and kept moving because the franchise utilities are in the way, or what's the actual concern on the roundabouts?
I think the concerns we heard from everyone so far was the flow of traffic through. It hasn't been clear, and being able to open it up and free more traffic to get through, and then having started the other one when the other one's there. I get the whole. I get that you had to do that due to the utilities. So I guess my only thought would be, is there anything we've learned from it so far that we might apply, like as far as directing traffic through to be able to get more through? As you know, we've had backups on all sides of it, onto the freeway, onto the turns, on all the roads there. So I don't know if there's a way around it. When you're doing projects like this, sometimes there isn't. But
yeah, and I don't think I don't think the construction's causing it. I think it's just the lack of understanding how to use a roundabout, which we've been trying to send out messages. I know Capriva, our PIO, has been putting stuff on social media. He added some information to, I think, one of our connection magazines. I mean, once a roundabout's open, there's no signal. So as long as people can get their, yield and make their right at the, when they should, it should be more efficient than a signaled system, ultimately. And then other than that, I mean, what we always learn from these projects, and it's been 18 years since I've been doing capital projects, these franchise utilities, I mean, I wish we had more. I wish we had more pull to get them moving sooner, because they have been causing delays and costs. Even just a few projects since I've been working here, I've seen delays and costs add up just because they can't get out of the way fast enough for us. So yeah, we're strategizing internally how to deal with franchise utilities. And then the first part of your question was pavement. There's already the next, I think, 3 years slated for our chip and patch program. Of course, every year we look at, and we work with our O&M department, because there's some things now, especially that they're down to a person and a half in their crew. There's only, some things that they can do. So we're trying to augment with our groups, see what we can put out through the capital program for them to help out. Some of the patches are just not the right criteria for them to do, and they don't have enough people to provide traffic control. So really, they're limited right now on what they can do in O&M. But yeah, the next 3 years are slated for chip and patch, and then after every winter, we're looking at what is looking bad and what do we need to hit that O&M can't hit. And I don't know all those streets off the top of my head for the next 3 years, but there is a map for me to kind of follow. And actually, what we're doing this year around Lake Louise was actually supposed to happen in 2021 based on the map, but before I got here, there was a decision to move 2022 projects to 2021. So now I'm doing 2021 and 2022. So
well, you've had a busy first year. We appreciate your work. I remember when you came in last year and you're like, I've only been on the job a week, so cut me some slack. But no, it's really helpful. We know that it's needed, and we just hope that we can keep getting the funds in like you have been doing. And if there's anything we can take away from what you've observed out there to keep the traffic flowing on other ones, but we're constantly trying to figure this out too from every angle. So we applaud your efforts.
Yeah, and I think as everybody has seen, as Gravely has been under construction, getting to the Veterans Connection area was tough, because then we had a lot of folks using Langlo Pine Walnut to get around. And now, moving towards Nyanza and working on Nyanza, well, the north side of Nyanza is a pinch point. And there's only, unless we're going to send people down Pacific Ave or Pac Highway, we're going to, once we get to actually work on that intersection at the north side of Nyanza, we're going to have kind of the same situation we had over at Veterans. And I'm not sure how to make that any better, because it's a pinch point. There's no good route around. But it's, we're going to, before that actually happens, I'm sure we're going to make sure we do a lot of public outreach, because that one's going to be a fun one to figure out how we're going to either upgrade the signal or make it a roundabout. I don't think we've pinned down the exact remedy for that intersection, but I know the span wires are getting old and probably going to need replaced here soon. And yeah.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Hill. We have one more from Mr. Larson.
Thank you. Clover Park High School on 112th Street. 112th Street has partial sidewalks up to the church, then they stop, and there's a lot of student traffic on 112th Street between Gravelly Lake Drive and going east. And I wondered what the plan is, and we're in the schedule that sidewalks and improvement of 112th Street is.
Wow, I wish I could do more than just the tip presentation. So another good question. So we are actually, we have a number of projects in the Sound Transit arena in their tier 1 funding. I think we have 4 or 5 projects, and 112th is one of them. So once Sound Transit can get through the environmental stage, which I guess they just started here recently, I can't remember their exact timing, but that is 112th, both sides, sidewalk, curb gutter, all the way down, is on the list. As a little stopgap, we do have safe routes to school, which we're going to be putting in a little bit more sidewalk on the north side. You know, it's something. It's not as much as the Sound Transit doing the whole stretch and funding us. But we do have a number of projects that Sound Transit will be funding. We're hoping to take over the design ourselves because we can do it in-house faster than them, and usually a bit more cost effective. So yeah, I wish I had more time to, you know, and the list in front of me so I could tell you guys all the good stuff we have coming our way here soon that we actually know about. And then of course, a lot that we're going after for grants.
Okay, thank you. If you need help lobbying, I think I could organize a scout troop to help get the word out.
Sounds good.
Great, Mr. Hill. Who?
One more.
Okay, go ahead. Oh, Mr. Pearson.
Yeah, I just you know, with the Gravelly Lake project and that Gravelly Lake at Washington being closed down, there's been a lot of traffic back through the Interlochen, Lake Steilacoom Drive area, and you know, are any of those roads going to be repaired anything more than just the potholes? I mean, they've gotten hammered this winter. So
they are on the list to get some of the potholes repaired. Unfortunately, I only have a limited amount of funds. I did look at some of the gatoring of the road, but we are going to focus on more of the potholes and get those fixed on 112, especially there where it meets Silicon Lake. There's quite a few at that intersection and some down. We tried putting in some traffic measures because for some reason it's not our defined detour route, but a lot of people are using it. So we put in the extra stop sign at Idlewilds. We did put a speed hump in on, I can never remember the name of the road, but we did put a speed hump in on one of the roads that was getting a lot of speeders. And we're working with PD to try to do some emphasis patrols if they can through that area. But yes, we do have a little bit of a patch that we've identified to do through that 112th area to try to take care of some of the bigger potholes that have manifested since the detour route or lack of detour route has occurred.
okay, thanks.
Great. Mr. Estrada.
And I want to thank whomever decided to do Boston Avenue and Chicago Avenue. I think that was a great idea. Make it safe for all the citizens in those areas. Yeah, great, thank you.
Okay, hearing no more questions, I think, Mr. Hill, thank you again for your presentation. As always, keep up the good work and just try to get as much money as you can and get these things done yesterday, right?
That's the name of the game.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate your presentation.
Yes.
Okay, moving along, we have any reports from staff?
Nope, just to say you will have another meeting on May 4th, and we'll be getting back into comprehensive plan amendments. That cycle continues. You'll also start to hear about the tree preservation code update process. And we will also have Mr. Buer back this next month with the climate change final action on that implementation plan.
Great. Do we have any comments from our liaison from the council, Mr. Wilkie?
Yes, Paul Boki, council liaison. I just wanted to mention tomorrow night's a PCRC meeting, and Mayor Whalen and I will be there. Did you ever show them the letter? Did they ever get
Not the
that?
one,
Okay.
no.
So Mayor Whalen sent a letter to the chair of the PCRC, the Pierce County Regional Council, dated April 7th, 2022, and how this impacts this committee is it has to do with our growth targets, population growth targets. We're in that, I guess we do this every 5 years or something now. So just so we're all on the same page, in 2017, the 2030 growth target that was assigned to Lakewood was 72,000 people. So as of the census, I think we were at 63,000. Our 2030 growth target is 72,000. The growth target that we're going to be talking about over the next few months is for 2044. So 14 years later. And a consultant group went through and they gave us two growth targets, and one was for 88,758 people in 2044, and the other was 80,488. Mayor Whalen's position, or the council's position that Mayor Whalen expressed in his letter, is that 80,000 would be a number that we could accept for 2044. 80,274. It's based on assuming the downtown and Lakewood Station District subareas will develop at maximum densities allowed outright under their zoning, resulting in 1,298 more units than the 4,029 initially anticipated, and assuming an equivalent of at least 11 housing units will also be built outside the subareas annually through 2044, resulting in at least 260 units at 2.3 individuals per household. Lakewood's option 2 target is slightly below their option 2 target. This is 86,792 people. And he goes on through the logic of that we would have to do some things differently. That would assume maximum growth in the 2 subareas, an equivalent of at least 17 housing units would also be built outside the subareas annually through 2044, and assuming that vacant and underdeveloped acreage throughout the city's CBD, multifamily 1, multifamily 2, multifamily 3, mixed residential 1, mixed residential 2, neighborhood commercial 1, neighborhood commercial 2, R1 through R4, which is all the residential zonings in the transit-oriented commercial zones, will develop and redevelop at higher than historical densities, resulting in at least 3,491 new units at 2.43 people per household. Clearly, that's going to be a much more difficult number for us to get. There were also 2 other letters, interestingly enough, both from the other folks in our category, one from Puyallup and one from University Place, where they were very similar, I guess. And I would ask Ms. Spear if you have questions. And really, those were all the comments that came from the cities. So it'll be an interesting evening tomorrow when we discuss it.
If you don't mind, I could add a little bit more
Yep,
to that.
go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair. So as you know, there's the Growth Management Act, there's the regional policies countywide and down to the city, right? What we're talking about now is a process by which the State Office of Financial Management and the Puget Sound Regional Council both say, we're going to project growth countywide. And then within the county, all of the jurisdictions are separated by size. And so Tacoma is up by itself. It's the biggest one. UP, Puyallup, and Lakewood are in one category together, and then other cities are in smaller sized categories. And all 3 of the what are called core cities, including Lakewood, have come back and said, OFM or Puget Sound Regional Council, you have projected this amount of growth. Realistically, we don't feel we'll be able to absorb that amount of growth by 2044. If you get to a point where through the process of adoption of these targets by the Pierce County Council, the final adopted number for the core cities in this case are below what Vision 2050 says, anticipates, there is a potential for the PSRC to then down the road say, City of Lakewood, in our case, comprehensive plan isn't consistent with Vision 2050, and as a result, you may not be qualifying for transportation funds anymore. So somewhat ironic, we just got done talking about the grants coming through PSRC. However, you have all 3 of the core cities saying the same thing, which kind of points a finger at this whole process and says, hey, wait a minute, something's not quite working. So the process that begins tomorrow night is the Pierce County Regional Council. We'll take a look at the letters. We'll take a look at the numbers that have been provided through this process from PSRC down to the county and cities and decide which way they're going to go with it. So It'll be tomorrow night at PCRC and then at least again in May. And then eventually it'll come back to the city council as a way to ratify whatever the county council does. But it is really now the rubber is starting to meet the road of GMA says cities grow a lot and unincorporated areas grow less. The cities are saying, hey, wait a minute, we can't grow that fast.
Right.
That's what we're starting to see.
Great. Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
Go ahead, Mr. Book.
Right, and so that number, thank you, Ms. Spear, that came down, if University Place's numbers are accurate in their letter. For instance, the Vision 2050 allocates a population growth of 85,000 between 2017 and 2050 to these 4 core cities. What's the 4th core city?
It's Auburn, but it crosses over up into King County.
Okay. For the next comprehensive AHBL, that's the consultant has allocated the 4 core cities should be allocated a population growth of 60,900 people between 2020 and 2044. So that would be all 4 cities. If this allocation were to be based on the percentage of total population of the core cities, University Place is saying that they would be in line to take almost 14,000. So, and then Puyallup was similar. They were pretty reasonable. So I think we're at a good starting point, but we'll see where it goes because.
Yeah, we have a couple questions. Mr. Combs first.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. I think and thank you, Councilmember Boki, for the explanation and reminder on this. I think the question is probably best directed, Howard, to Ms. Spears. I'm wondering if there's do you have the percentage year-over-year increase that this new, because I do recall it was a slightly higher percentage than we thought we could obtain and way higher than historically had been obtained. Do you remember or have handy what their proposed number percentage year-over-year was and what our counter is to them in this case? And the follow-up question is, if we're unable to meet these numbers collectively as cities going back to the PRC, where do they take that? Do they take that back to the state and then try and renegotiate? Because I think the state's just trying to say that you have to meet these certain targets. Is that something that can happen, or do we know yet? And I'll take my hand down.
Okay. I'll try to answer your questions. Forgive me if I forget and just remind me if I don't answer all. So first of all, historically, between 2010 and 2020, City of Lakewood grew at about 550 people per year. And if you were to keep on that track, their 2044 total population would be well below the 80,000 that's being projected, let alone the 88,000 that's being projected by the 2 different techniques from the AHBL consultant work. In order to achieve the amount of the 80,274 that City of Lakewood has brought to the table to talk to PCRC about, it's about double the amount of historical growth. And the way the city is saying it can potentially happen is through that densification that's now planned for in both the downtown and in the Lakewood Station District areas. As the Planning Commission knows, within both of those places, it's a switch from traditional zoning to form-based code. And it's also increasing the amount of density that's allowed both just outright and also through incentives. So the idea is most of the growth is happening in those 2 areas of the city. Whether the growth will actually happen, obviously it's market-based. Obviously it's the availability of land to either assemble first and then redevelop, or if someone else already has a parcel big enough to do so, redeveloping that. And then in terms of what happens next, if the Pierce County Regional Council makes a recommendation up to the Pierce County Council, which is the group that actually adopts these targets, PCRC can say, we agree with these explanations by the core cities and they need a lower amount, which is going to lower the total amount for Pierce County. Pierce County Council can accept or reject that. Depending on what they do, that would then dictate what number City of Lakewood will have to plan for going forward. Whatever Pierce County Council does, eventually it gets up to the Puget Sound Regional Council, because all of the jurisdictions' comp plans go up to there to be certified as consistent with GMA and with the multi-county planning policies. And I know this is acronym alphabet soup. So from PSRC's vantage point, they're going to be watching what each comprehensive plan number is, and then say, based on what PSRC has adopted in Vision 2050, and based on just the fundamental policies in growth management, to say cities grow, unincorporated areas grow less, rural areas really don't grow. They may say, City of Lakewood or City of Puyallup, whomever it is, you are not consistent with those policies or with that state law. And that means at this point, we are not going to allow you to apply for these transportation funds. That's the teeth behind this whole process. What could happen is that ultimately there's a discussion had up at Puget Sound Regional Council in the next 10-year period to say those population assumptions within Vision 2050 were wrong for whatever reason. And then come Vision 2060, maybe they make a change. But this is a long slog, and it is a repeating slog. It just continues to happen. So I will say, though, that Lakewood in the past has kind of been on its own with making these criticisms of the process and the population projections. Now we have multiple cities saying the same thing. So that may change the dynamic of the discussion.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Combs, and thank you, Tiffany. Mr. Pearson has a question.
Yeah. So, you just kind of mentioned that they don't account like rural areas as, having much growth in unincorporated areas. But I mean, if you look at where a lot of the new homes are being developed in the area, a lot of it is in unincorporated Pierce County. And so how do those numbers compare to their projected growth? Like, are they exceeding? I would imagine so. And is that, it just, when you look at the numbers, it's like, if we're under, someone else is probably over somewhere, and it kind of, that's where it looks like the easiest development is, the most area. And, a lot of jobs are being created out there, Frederickson area and stuff. So it's, I just, it's kind of, I don't know, it still just kind of blows my mind that, we're supposed to have all this growth, but you look at like where it's more cost effective and easier to develop, and it's not right here.
Sorry, there's a couple of things happening related to your comment, Mr. Pearson. First of all, yes, in unincorporated Pierce County, and keep in mind, let me slow down.
Not Tahale, sorry, yeah.
Well, yeah, but unincorporated just means it's not a city, right? Within unincorporated, there is rural, which is like forest lands and agricultural lands, and it's really not slated for residential or industrial or commercial growth. Then there's urban unincorporated, which is, it's not a city, but it looks like it. So if you go out there and you look at Parkland, Midland, getting down into where Sunrise is located and further south, that is urban unincorporated. It's not a city yet, but it sure feels and looks like it. Mm-hmm. So the rural area gets the least amount of growth because it's being preserved for other types of uses besides people. There's urban unincorporated, which is not yet a city, but it may be on its way to being a city. And then there's the cities themselves. Within the city world, there's the bigger cities like Tacoma, there's the medium cities, which is including Lakewood, Puyallup, and UP. And then there's the smaller ones from Bonnie Lake on down to Eatonville and Buckley, right? What's happening right now is unincorporated urban county is saying, we have vested lots, we have vested developments, we have Tahale as a master plan community all coming. You need to recognize that and say the amount of growth coming to unincorporated urban county is higher than the number that you have in that process right now. The other thing that's happening is that the smaller cities, several of them are saying, hey, we're growing faster than you're telling us we're supposed to be growing. And so part of this whole back and forth sausage making stuff is just to not only talk among the core cities, those 3 or 4 of us, but also those other parts of the county, other jurisdictions to say, we don't take this much, maybe you take some of it, maybe you take some of it. But again, it comes up against those ideas of how much growth do the small cities plan for? How much growth does an unincorporated county plan for? And then the other cities as well.
It's a big negotiation
Oh,
period.
it is, yeah. It is.
Go ahead, Mr. Boki. Any other comments?
I mean, to Ms. Spears' remarks, I believe that there are county or cities in the region and maybe even in this county that have already hit their 2030 growth targets. I think Gig Harbor might have actually done that. They just had a really rapid build out in the last 10 years or so that have boosted that number. So where they fit in going forward in these negotiations, it's will be interesting. I mean, I think we've taken a very realistic position, and clearly the major difference for us from years past when we would just be standing there going, we can't fit that many people in, is we have those two sub-area plans. And those sub-area plans have allowed us to be much more reasonable, I think, in our approach when we go to the meetings. There's already interest, by the way, at least we're hearing it, that there's already interest, especially in the transit plan.
Good. Any other? Thank you, Mr. Boki. I appreciate your comments and also your service on the council. Appreciate it. Thank you. Any other comments from fellow commissioners? Seeing or hearing none. At this time, we'll call meeting adjourned.
Great. Everybody have a good evening. Thank you.
Yeah, good night, bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much traffic going on, it's falling apart quickly.
Yeah, even the patches didn't hold as long.
Public Works is like, we don't want to be diverting traffic. They're basically treating the Washington Boulevard project as part of the whole area, right? So that's next, in the next year.